What's up, world? It's your boy, the Bearded Brother. And I'm back with another episode of the Beerded Tastings. And this guest is super dope because he reached out to me to jump on the show. So that means he's got a lot to say, a lot to talk about. And just jumping on his Instagram at I just forgot your Instagram that quickly, but that's how my ADD works sometimes. Um, Thai Gothcore 666. And when I go to this page,
Right.
it's very interesting. It's not the lifestyle I live in, but I don't disapprove of it because he makes it look badass as hell. But as y'all can see on the screen, my guy's right next to me, so I'm gonna let him talk about himself a little bit and kind of just jump in and talk about gothcore and being an alternative person of color. So enough hearing from me, my guy. Take it away.
All right. What's up, everybody watching this? This is Ty Gothcore or Ty Jamar in real life. I'm from the Bronx, New York, and I'm a person of color born and raised in the Bronx from a West Indian Caribbean family. And I've been working in craft beer for 5 years. And I also dabble in photography, vinyl collection, concert going, traveling, the usual stuff. So anything you want to know is all on the Instagram, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So as you heard, this is just like a modern day Renaissance man. He does a little bit of everything, and it looks like he does it well. Um, as a person myself, I'm not accustomed to gothcore. What
Mm-hmm.
is that? Is it a genre of music? Is it like a lifestyle? Talk about that a little bit.
So Gothcore, as far as like the brand goes, is something that I came up with while I was like sitting at home during the pandemic when everybody was just sitting at home and everybody was like not like able to work for like a couple months, and I just wanted to get like my creativity out in the open. I was like, everybody has their own like little brands and stuff like that. So why don't I just start one of my own? And one that came to mind is actually a little bit of like a hybrid of like gothic culture and hardcore punk culture. So I was like, oh, gothcore, because that's the type of music I grew up listening to in the early 2000s in high school with like certain like bands such as like Bleeding Through, Avenged Sevenfold, like all those guys that wore a lot like the all black and painted the nails black, wore the guy liner and everything. So that's I kind of embody that anyway. So it was like, let me turn that into like a little brand of beer and just see what ideas I could come up with as far as beer collaborations. Because a lot of the friends of mine have always done like beer collaborations. I was like super interested in doing that. So I was like, let me use that to get my creative vehicle and let me show people who are interested in what I'm doing as far as craft beer and see what my vision is and just be able to express myself in that kind of way. So
Okay, so kind of just in that way. So it's like a mix of two different cultures,
yeah.
um, and two different brands and things like that coming together and kind of creating a space not only just for you and then it's a bunch of people out there. That's the beautiful thing about craft beer. It's all different types of people can come together and guess what? We enjoy this one thing,
Right.
beer,
Mhm.
and we're all the same playing field in that moment coming into the space. And the thing that really jumps out for me on your Instagram is the alternative person of color.
Mhm.
That's probably one of my favorite phrases of using. I don't even know how to like kind of term it without saying alternative, just like because it's one of my more favorite ways of saying people that don't fit the quote unquote
The norm. Yeah,
mold.
yeah. Yeah.
Real emphasis on the air quotes, y'all.
Yeah.
So, because you hear things from one, which makes me cringe when people say like blurs and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, um, so kind of what do you categorize alternative as? How do you define it for you? And how do you I guess, label other people, not in like a judgmental way, but you're like, oh, okay, you're alternative because you're into this. You're alternative because there are you're not. Like, what are some things you kind of use to measure that? If you even have one.
Yeah, so alternative to me is like people like myself who grew up in like communities like the North Bronx, but I'm originally from Fordham section of the Bronx, and the neighborhood I lived in, it was like all basically like hip hop culture, Latino music culture. Like you go to the bodega around like the corner from like my old apartment building where I used to live in with my family. You always hear like bachata and Spanish music, and you always hear a lot of hip hop around the area, stuff like that. But in the house I grew up in, because I grew up with two older sisters in my house, they always used to play like a lot of like the alternative rock music. Like to answer your question, alternative is basically kids who grew up listening to like rock music, like grunge, alternative, bands like The Cure, Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's most of the like the music I grew up on, and just like watching MTV in the early '90s, like bands like Stone Temple Pilots, Nirvana, Soundgarden, stuff like that. So just it's basically just being the opposite of what you would normally be categorized as far as like being a person of color, whether you're black or Latino or you're Indian, whatever. Because people like to generally loop black people into hip hop because in the Bronx, New York, it's obviously the birthplace of hip hop, but little do people know that there's like a little different cultures going around in the Bronx. Like you would go to maybe like a rock concert in the Bronx, and you wouldn't, like you would be surprised because you won't see that kind of stuff, or you just see Spanish music shows going up because you wouldn't believe it because it's a melting pot of like cultures in the Bronx. But the one that you really generalize like people from the Bronx is hip hop. And people like myself growing up listening to that type of music that we do, like because our parents growing up weren't so into hip hop unless you were like talking about Sugar Hill Gang and like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, stuff like that. But not so much like the Death Rows, the NWAs, like the more vulgar, provocative kind of stuff. So we weren't allowed to listen to that kind of stuff, even though Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg were playing on MTV, and I was watching MTV with my sister, and my mom didn't mind that. So, but so yeah, just like basically just like being different from everybody else, being a weirdo, being involved in skateboarding, being involved in wearing um, alternative clothing such as like Supremes and Vans and DC skate shoes, and just separating yourself from everybody else and being yourself, and being made fun of in school because of like your peers in school who are like super into hip hop will make fun of you for being different, being weird and stuff like that. Just embracing your weird self, basically. So that's what being an alternative person of color is to me, because black and brown people growing up in the hood and shit like that, and listen to bands like Linkin Park just to escape from like the harsh like areas where you came up in. That's what alternative person of color is to me.
I love it, and I knew it was going to be a good episode because we have the exact same mentality. I did grow up listening
Mm-hmm.
to hip hop. I grew up in Atlanta, so like
Uh,
hip hop is just as much Atlanta as it is the Bronx, out in LA and Compton. So I grew
yeah,
up Ludacris, TLC, and things
yeah,
like that. Get a little newer, Rich Homie Quan and stuff like that. And then franchise wars. I was in Atlanta when like the snap music like era
yeah, yeah,
started,
yeah.
and I still remember to this day when like Crank That Soldier Boy came out. Like you
Yeah,
knew it was history, but you didn't know what to do with it.
yeah.
So like you're just like, oh man, I'm sitting here in history. What do we do? And that's like the start of YouTube started popping up. And you saw once you started seeing YouTube videos, like that blew up. Like being in Atlanta, but like I always, even though I listened to that music, I felt like it was never enough for me because
Mhm.
I did go to a private school. I grew up going to private school since first grade all the way till I graduated Belmont in 2015. I never stepped foot in a school day in a public school. We played public schools for sports and stuff, But being growing up in that, and like you said, growing around people that went to the public schools and were like just straight up from your neck of the woods, but not into what you're doing, not talking how you're talking.
Hmm.
Because I always like different things as well. Like I like watching lacrosse. I played it for a second, and I got into beer. And one of you probably heard it too is like beer's some white ass shit or Lincoln Park. You nigga, you
Hmm.
listen to Lincoln Park.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And you mentioned going to my next question is you talked about Vans and talked about Supreme.
Mhm.
I know it's probably a part of you that's like, oh yeah, see, I knew I was doing something dope, but
Mhm.
for me, there's times when like I use terminology like dude or bro, I would get
Right.
made fun of.
Right.
And now all the black people I grew up with say it all the time. So I'm like, I'm glad it's in our culture, but it's like, y'all had to roast me to get here. Like, and so like I have that like kind of it might be petty. Hey,
Hmm.
that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's how you feel when you see like Vans and Supreme on rappers when you're
Mhm.
like, man, this dude would have made fun of me if he saw me in high school or in middle school or whatever
Exactly.
time of my life. So I was like, I just wanted to like see what your thoughts were about like seeing things that were considered alternative going into hip hop culture.
All right, so I grew up going. I went to high school in Westchester, Mount Kisco area, and I didn't really get into like the alternative culture until like maybe like my sophomore junior year of high school. So when I first started as like a junior high school student, because it was a mix of junior high and high school and all in one. Because you when you first right your first year you're in junior high, and then the next year you start up as like a freshman in high school. I didn't. So like freshman year of high school for me, I was like really embedded into hip hop because even though it was like different growing up going to middle school and just like making the transition from middle school to junior high school, I was already listening to like a little bit of like everything, like the freestyle pop music, the grunge, just pretty much like being all eclectic. And I was like dressing different, of course. And of course, when I went to junior high, I was like, started to be making fun of. So I was just like kind of experienced the whole. You're getting into that part of your life. You're gonna not be as, it's like kind of like being like thrown into like the lions in a way. So you just kind of had to adapt, and that's what I basically started like dressing like more in like Sean Johns and Timberlands and sneakers, and just like listening to a lot of like the rappers like DMX and the Wu-Tang Clan, like the good stuff. And then when I started getting into like more alternative stuff, I was like in the same art class with like maybe like two or three kids who were like dressing like super punk with like the bondage pants from like Trash and Vaudeville, and just like talking in a way that I didn't think I would start like talk think I would talk in ways, because I never really talked like that growing up. So and then when I heard the song "In the End" by Linkin Park, I actually, my first like rock song I ever like really listened to was like "And Together Now" by Limp Bizkit, because the music video was him and Method Man all in one song, and it was like kind of like of course you would hear like the stuff like Nookie and Counterfeit and stuff like that, and you hear the heavy stuff, but then you hear the song with Method Man. It's like more hip hop based because DJ Premier produced it. And then years and months passed. I started listening to bands like Slipknot and Linkin Park, and just like bands who would like mix rock and hip hop together, because of course Run DMC and Aerosmith were like the pioneers of that kind of sound back in those days. And it wasn't really like super popular until like bands like Korn and Ice Cube started collaborating together. Kid Rock started doing stuff and all stuff like that. And then I started like slowly creeping into like the more alternative side, and not so much leaving like the hip hop side, but just like listen to a little bit of like both sides, because I started like embracing both sides. And of course, like I bought my first bondage pants from Trash and Vaudeville, I think senior year of high school, and of course I got shit for it, and I started hanging with like the more alternative rock kids and just like talking more about like metal and hardcore and punk and buying stuff like Revolver magazine. I think Hit Parader was the big magazine and stuff like that. And then I fully embraced it like graduating high school because I was listening to more and more heavier stuff and a little less of like the hip hop stuff, unless you're like at a college frat party or something and you would listen to like Get Low by Little John or stuff like the Backwoods and Paul Wall and all this other stuff. So that's like a lot of the 2003 2004. That's when like a lot of like the mainstream music was like super popular going to like maybe like your freshman year of like college or something.
Okay, okay. But I did just realize we've gone 15 minutes and I have not even cracked open my beer. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Good.
I can't be a beer podcast and not do that. So,
Right.
but um, as I'm pouring this, my man Ty has a. This is your collab, right? Before I'm just putting lies out into the world.
Right.
So this is a silhouette. It's a rice lager through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a collab with Thin Man Brewing, Thrice, and Gothcore.
Yes.
So basically, the rice lager is just a super light beer, easy drinking, very approachable for you new beer drinkers or people that are not really familiar with beer. This is something you want to definitely try out because it just kind of hits all the boxes of what we even mentioned about like being traditionally black. This is kind of like what is traditionally a beer. Like what you think of beer, you're going to think of course, Budweiser, but like this is a better version, a
Right.
rice lager. So I'm about to pour this thing up.
All right. Do it up.
Oh man. So I like that color in my glass. Shout out to 17% Drip. Making dope glasses for beer
Oh, that's sick.
and wine. So let me try this thing.
Right.
Oh, I like the aroma on there. It's got a little fruit, like blueberry, strawberry kind of. Like a little berry kind of aroma to it.
Right.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I like that slight hoppiness at the end. I like that. I'm gonna let you get into this beer and kind of just talk about it. How did this collab come about? What was the brewing process like, and all that?
All right. So the Thrice collab, it started when of course, I was like sitting at home just thinking of ideas of how I wanted to present myself as like gothcore beers and stuff like that. So the first collab did under gothcore was with this taproom slash brewery called Randolph Beer, which is based in the Dumbo section of Brooklyn. Even though it was like two other locations, but the main location nowadays, because the other two locations closed down, is the one that's based in the Dumbo section of Brooklyn, and that's the place I originally first started working my first like ever craft beer job because I've been attending a lot of like Uptown Beer Society beer gatherings and just being introduced to craft beer that way and going to places like the Sampler and doing like beer shares in like City Island on the boat or whatever. And I met the singer from Thrice, Dustin. His cousin Kyle was my old manager at Randolph Beer in Dumbo, and we shared like a lot of like the same like style of music because he grew up like watching his cousin get signed to Hopeless Records and Island Def Jam the next time in Atlantic Records. Then Thrice is like taking off in their career and stuff like that. So fast forward years later, I was talking with my boy Mike from Thin Man, who was like the director of sales over there, and we knew him from when after I became like official Uptown Beer Society member, we did a collab with Barrier, which where Mike was working at the time, and we did a collab beer with a local band from the Bronx who was like super influential to all of us kids going to shows in the Bronx at the Throgsneck church basement or the Point Community Center at the Hunts Point section in the Bronx, and we always see them play all the time, and they mean so much to a lot of like the young kids who are like looking for a place to belong and people like kids who listen to a lot of the same style of music. So the band from the Bronx, they're called Daily's Gone Wrong, and one of the more popular songs that they have is called Bronx Dance Party, which was released in like 2007, 2009 ish. So it was like a very, very popular song, and everybody loved that song. So me and my boy Joel with Uptown Beer Society, we were talking, and I'm like, why don't we do a beer with Daily's Gone Wrong? And we just basically hit up Barrier because they've done band collabs with bands such as Every Time I Die and et cetera, et cetera. And I think they did Thrice collab too as well. So we took the idea to them. I think it was mostly Joel's doing who talked because he was like more closer with those like people in Barrier because when we did the beer out there, it's like my first time actually being out there. And we did the beer. We did a 12, 14 band release festival months after. And then years later, I saw Mike at a boat show where Every Time I Die played like this rock soft cruise thing, and of course they were like bringing cases and cases of their collab with Every Time I Die, and then I think he said that he was moving up to Buffalo to start working at Thin Man or whatever, and then years later, and then he was coming down to visit because I haven't seen him in a while, and I was like, hey, let's catch up, and because we liked a lot of the same music too, so we went to this place called Sweet Avenue in Sunnyside, Queens, and we met up and we caught up and just like sharing what we've been doing and stuff like that and it was I think it was like October 2022, and I was like, hey, next year is the 20th anniversary of the Artist in the Ambulance, and I've been wanting to do a lot of like band collabs, but they end up like falling through or whatever, and because I think anybody was on like the same page or like everybody's schedule's like too busy because we lost like pretty much like months out of our lives and careers and I think there was just like playing catch up and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So Mike was like, "Oh, let's. I'm up in Thin Man, and I'm the right person to talk to, and of course, like, yeah, let's do it." And then I got in touch with Kyle again, and I was like, me and Mike were just talking, and we were gonna do a collab with Rice, and just to celebrate 20 years of Artists in the Ambulance. And Kyle was like, "Oh wow, let's do it." So, and of course, Kyle's Dustin's cousin, so he knows how to easily get in touch with the team and then I think a month or so after, we got the initial conversation going, and we were just like going over ideas of what style we wanted to do. And we had Dustin involved, we had their manager involved, and everybody's like super excited to do it. And then I think a month or so after, even though I didn't really get to go to Buffalo to be a part of the brewing process, I made sure I was um, in touch with like Mike and the brewing team over there, and they sent me photos of like throwing the hops in the mash and just like seeing the canning going on like after the beer was fermented and all that stuff, so I could post on my social media. And then I went to the show because they were doing like a full U.S. tour around like late May, early June of this year, and I went to the one on Terminal 5 in Manhattan on June 1st, and we were hoping to get the beer sold in there, but it was hard to get the beers in those venues so that at least the fans can have it so they can drink it while watching the band and stuff like that. But thankfully, we're going to do another batch of it. Spoiler alert for those who don't know. So they're going to do a second U.S. tour. We're going to try to get beer, the second batch of that beer into those venues so the fans can have it too. So and then so yeah, then we did I did a little party thing where we could play like bands like Thrice over the speakers and Thursday and Finch and I was DJing and it took place at Beer Run Harlem in Harlem section. I think it's like Harlem and Broadway or something like that. So everybody came through like a lot of like the local kids from the Bronx scene who are like um doing like actual full time careers and uh, still doing music on the side, but not so doing so much because everybody has like bills to pay and rent and mortgage and stuff like that. So everybody bought the beer, everybody loved it. It was a good reception, and we had like 5 cases of the cans in the store. Then we had the 1/6 of the beer on draft, and everybody was like buying the shit out of the draft. And I think the draft sold out. I think maybe like 2 days after the party happened, but we still had like cans available in the store. And I think beer is being distributed like from like the Northeast all the way down to this like Florida or something like that. So I'm pretty sure people can find it. And so we're gonna do a second batch in the fall, so it could be available for the venues for the second iteration of like the U.S. tour, and so everybody will be able to finally taste it, and hopefully it will be a lot better than the not to say that the beer was bad or anything, but just like we're gonna probably take it up a notch and just throw a little like kinks in there and just make it just as good as the first batch.
Oh yeah, like, but that's awesome. I love how you brought you and everyone together, and y'all stayed linked. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you weren't able to get there and brew that, but they made sure they sent you pictures, sent you videos, and let you be as much as you can a part of it without just being like, okay, just throw your name on it, almost like signing your name at the end of a project or a card your sister's got for your mom. You just throw your name on there because you ain't get your
Yeah,
mom something for their birthday. And
yeah,
I I love that. I love when breweries are actually really like working in their collaborations and making people feel a part of it. Because I've seen collaborations. I've fortunately have not been a part of one,
mm-hmm.
but I've seen where just people kind of just throw their name on there and they ain't really did much of anything. So it's just like kind of took away from the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with that being said, I do enjoy this beer, so I can only imagine what you guys are going to do to bump it up because this is good how it is now. I can taste a little bit of the sweetness. Did y'all use corn in here, or do you know?
That I don't know because I asked for the recipe so I can actually explain it completely, but everybody's been like super busy up there, and because they're cranking out beers left and right. So, like, hopefully, when I finally go up to Buffalo to see Thin Man, because I haven't been up to Thin Man Brewing yet, so just so I can see the space and everything. So when I go up there for future projects or whatever, then I'll finally be able to get a glimpse of like what the recipes and all like the ingredients that people use in the beer. So
Okay, but yeah. So, folks, wherever you can find Silhouette, I definitely say go get you some because this is good. I can sit on my patio and drink this all day, or go to the lake, or do whatever. Sit at the pool.
Mhm.
This is gonna be in my hand pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's that's what I originally wanted to. I wanted the beer to have to be. I wanted it to be palatable for everybody who's not super into like super bitter and hoppy beers and stuff like that. So I just wanted like pretty much everybody to enjoy, not just like super hoppy drinkers, but somebody who are like maybe are not super into beer and maybe their first time trying a light beer or just because I when I was working as bartender, I always used to like recommend lighter beers to people who are like not super into beer so they can get their I guess their palate ready for whatever they would want to try and be interested in. So yeah, that was definitely the goal with this beer, just to make sure everybody enjoyed it and everybody can drink the shit out of it and shit like that, but responsibly though.
Of course, yes. Drink responsibly, people, or drink because you got responsibilities. However you want to take it. I ain't gonna tell you what to do, but do it right and do it smart.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
glad you
because that
like
was
it.
gonna be my next question, I was like, how'd you even come up with doing wanting to do the style? Do you feel like it fits the personality of your brand, or what kind of? I know you say you want to kind of change the kinks. So that's just in the ingredients, or do you want to change the kinks and how the cans presented, marketing, and things like that? Like, what kind of kinks are you visioning for your next batch?
I think we're probably safe to say we're probably gonna stick to the original silhouette recipe, but I think we may throw in like a little something in there, not nothing too bad, but just like whatever like little like ingredients so it can I guess kind of like bump it up a notch, but still have it be as crushable. But I think probably we're gonna just stick to the original recipe because the original recipe obviously is a hit, obviously. So as far as like future goth beer collaborations go, I think we're probably gonna like play around with like different styles, but just kind of be more inventive and creative and just go a little bit like out of the box of the ordinary because you have your traditional styles like your IPAs, you have your Hefeweizens, your sours, stuff like that. But I just kind of want to be uh, I want to get my ideas out there, but I want to work with other people who I know I can trust, who've been like brewing longer than I have, because I don't really consider myself a brewer. I'm just a brand curator and back of house type of person, because I always worked like back of house jobs as well as bartending while getting into craft beer. And I've done an internship, a brewing internship. So yeah, I would rely on because it's not just my vision; it's other people's vision and their expertise just as well. So it's just kind of like what we mentioned before. It's like bringing everybody together and seeing what we can do just to create the big picture for everybody, because it's not just for us; it's for everybody to try too. Because there's a lot of beer fans all over the country and all over the world. So I just kind of like want to introduce people to, I guess, my vision. Not just my, of course, not just my vision, but everybody else's, and just like introduce them to a little something and just have fun, basically.
Okay. No, I love that, and I appreciate that. And kind of just kind of going into the end of this conversation, I just kind of want to just kind of go into just talking about how being in the space you're in with Gothcore and things like that, and someone that's at their coming of age, they're starting to realize, oh, I think this alternative lifestyle is for me, but like I'm scared to embrace myself in this because of what we talked about earlier in the episode of getting picked on, getting ostracized, and even from friends and even sometimes even family. Like, how
Hmm.
did you go through that, and what would you suggest a person that's around late junior high to that high school? You know, that's like one of the biggest like developmental personality and humanizing wise. Like, what did you do to kind of help yourself, and how would you tell those kids or even really adults that are like, okay, like I want to get into this space, I just don't know how?
All right, so first and foremost, for those who are not super into or not really understanding of the whole alternative culture and gothic culture, whatever you want to call it, it all came from Africa.
That's it.
So that's I
The
just
more
wanted
you
to get
know.
that
I
out
didn't
there.
even know that. See, I'm
Just want to
learning on
get
my
that
own
out.
show, people. So y'all better be listening.
Yeah, because like of course you see like all the voodoo culture in New Orleans and stuff like that. All that stuff came from Africa. So yeah, so any person of color watching this show or like whoever might hear this or whatever, don't be afraid to embrace your, I guess your gothic side, your alternative side and stuff like that, because all of it came from our people. But a lot of like the mainstream media or like whoever like kind of like whitened it a little bit and made you believe it's all white people culture and all that, but all this is all our people. So when I was like, because when I first got into it, I always thought that it was like super Caucasian culture until I grew up a couple years afterwards, and then I did my research, and it was like, oh, all the voodoo stuff and all this stuff is all based in Africa, and of course you see it in like one episode of like season 2 or 3 of American Horror. I think season 3 was like the it's like the
Yeah, I didn't
Coven.
watch it too much, so don't let me lie to you which season it was.
Yeah, I think it was like I think it was season 3. It was the Coven or season 2. I could be wrong because I haven't seen it in a while. But there's this one scene where Angela Bassett's character, who plays Marie Laveau, and he was talking with Jessica Lange's character, and she was like explaining all like how I think it was like kind of like a little like feuding scene a little bit, because I think she was like Angela Bassett was doing like the hairdresser and doing like the white lady's hair, and she was basically saying that all the voodoo and because it was based in like New Orleans and stuff like that. And it said like all the stuff, like the voodoo culture and the witch stuff, the witchcraft and all, it all came out of Africa. So anybody who's like picked on and all this stuff, just do the research and just basically anybody who like friends or family, just don't give into the whole like belittling and stuff like that. Just go and just like be yourself, and just like once they see that you're like super passionate about it and you could explain it to people who are not super judgmental and are like actually curious and want to learn more about you as a person or the culture. And once they hear you explain the shit to them, then they'll chances are they might turn around and you get your voice to like maybe like 10 people out of 100. Then anybody who may like not understand it, somebody who probably heard you talk about it will probably explain it to those people. Then it will go. It's like a wave, and it keeps going further and further and further, and then people will fully understand the culture and will come around and actually respect you for being yourself.
No, I love that. And I'm hoping whoever's listening to that, and even if it's even in the alternative culture or anything else that you find that might make you different from anybody, hopefully you hear that and be able to do your research, find your people. That's my like always my go-to when people want to talk about beer and get into beer or doing something a little bit different. I'm like, just find your people, find your group, find your tribe. That's the best way to really explain that, and being able to get people that can look like you, think like you, and support you the way you need to be supported, and be able to reach your full self. We all need a tribe. We all need a community. We all need a team. People say they're a lone wolf. You might think that, but no, there's a team of people behind you. There's a pack of people behind you, supporting you, pushing you. You might be able to make your own decisions on your own and achieve things on your own, but there's always someone around you. And I definitely appreciate that, which goes into my last comment. I always call it cheers,
Mm-hmm.
where I show my love and appreciation to the guests that's on the show, and just generally just commend them. In case I'm sure you're not gonna, it's not like you're never gonna hear this again, but for some other reason, in case you do, I appreciate you, Ty, and I love your brand. And I appreciate your brand and respect the hell out of your brand, because this is something really cool, something you don't see, and just continues to show how dope Black people are.
Yeah. And
And
speaking
that's
of,
not.
oh yeah, yeah, continue. You were saying sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say it's just continue breaking the mold of people seeing us as non-monolithic, as traditional Black people, like we've talked about, growing up in Atlanta and Bronx, only in hip hop, only doing these certain things. So I definitely appreciate you doing that, and hopefully you can continue to do that and bring out more of the alternative people, because it makes us look doper as a people. And I just, however I can, with the Beerded Tastings or the Bearded Brother, to support you, please let me know. All my followers, if you want to support Ty, make sure you follow him. Speaking of which, how can people keep up with you and find out different tips, tricks, cans of silhouette around when it comes back out around the fall time? How can people keep up with you?
All right, so people can keep up with me on Instagram at Thai Gothcore 666. You see a lot of like a little bit of like everything as far as like the music and the beer and stuff like that. And also wanted to send a quick shout out to Uptown Beer Society, my boys who I grew up going to the beer scene with, who actually introduced me to craft beer in the first place, because I wouldn't be in this position if it weren't for them introducing me to the craft beer world. And shout out to Black X Crafty, who I help curate special guests and events at the Peaches Grand in Brooklyn. Have people come out and try different Black-owned breweries such as Crowns and Hops and Montclair Brewing, Brown Girls Brew.
Shout out to Christina, Brown Girls
Yeah,
Brew.
Christina,
Had her on the
Brown Girl.
episode last. Oh, had her on my last episode. Super dope. Can't wait to work with her. We're gonna, me
Yeah,
and her are gonna talk on something, but something's gonna be coming between the Bearded Brother and Brown Girls Brew. So people, be on the lookout.
yeah, and because yeah, it's Black X Crafty. I help curate special guests and all this stuff because the beer world is all it all started from our like super great ancestors in Africa, because the women who are like at home watching the kids or whatever, they were the first ones to make beer in the first place. And also, shout out to those groups and brands such as Craft Beer Connoisseur, and of course you, Bearded Brother, and Brown Girls Brew and stuff like that, because a lot of like the culture vultures in this culture, they're taking our people's work and taking our terminology, taking our stuff and trying to put it on the can to market or whatever. Don't hesitate to call them out, or just don't be afraid to speak your mind and let the world know that whatever they're trying to do, try to make a profit and just to build a brand is unacceptable. Because being 5 years in this industry, I've learned who who to support, who not to support, and that's why I started doing Black is Crafty in the first place, so I can be amongst my own people, black people, and just sharing black people like Celeste from Harlem Brewing. Of course, Montclair. We just had Denise at Peaches Grand yesterday, telling the story about being the first African American owned craft beer establishment in Jersey and shit like that. Just just continue supporting black owned breweries, support people of color owned breweries, and just continue drinking good stuff, because there's a revolution coming. Even though person of color, black owned breweries are like 1% of like the people who own craft beer in the country go, but it's coming. We're gonna make some waves, and of course, if you haven't already, go research Barra and Flow Fest, research the history of Fresh Fest, and see see my Bearded Brothers wearing the
I
Barra
gotta
and Flow
say,
shirt. Yeah. So I'm going to be promoting a lot of that kind of stuff, and of course, we're going to be hosting beer shares in the future in black-owned establishments such as Harlem Hops, and just like trying to create some festivals that circle around black-owned breweries and actual culture as far as black and brown people, marginalized communities, and we probably may have some bands play at that festival. Who knows? But it's all a lot of stuff is in the works. So keep up with me on Instagram, Ty Gothcore 666. I'll be posting stuff regularly. And of course, everything's in black and white, but don't let that throw you off, because that's the gothic in me. So just, so continue to keep up, and of course, I'm going to be shouting out a lot of people like my peers in the industry, and so you can follow them too as well, and so you can see what we have cooking up in the future for sure.
no, I love it. And continue with the shout outs. Shout out Kevin Johnson and the Black Brewers National Black Brewers Association. They're just so like the craft beer association that's already existing. This specific one, this card here, is for people that look like me, that look like Ty, that look like Christina of Brown Girls Brew, that looks like the Black Beer Experience out of Nashville. One of my homies here in the city of Nashville. Console Brewing. There's just so many lists of people. Just know I'm not ignoring y'all. It's just that's a whole nother episode. Just shout outs that I could just do and release. But just know I see y'all. We love y'all, and we are coming. Like Ty said, we're on the horizon. You see in cartoons, like the little cloud that's coming over the horizon. That's us. That's the Black craft beer people, from the brewers to the curators to the brands to the consumers. We're coming in and taking our place. So you can get like in hip hop world, you can get with it or you can get lost. But you guys already
I
know how
mean,
to follow me. Um,
yeah, yeah, we're already in there. We're just we're slowly starting to I guess infect the current system a little bit.
I
Yeah,
like Infet. I like that. And we're starting to show ourselves. There we go. That's the
yeah.
better
We're starting
that's
to
a
put a
better
little
way.
color back into. We're putting a little color back into the world.
Yes. Yes, and bring a little culture to a place that wants to use our culture
Exactly.
but don't want to see us in it. You're
Hmm.
gonna see us, and we gonna be talking. And we gonna be loud.
Hmm.
So
Very,
y'all
very
better
loud.
get ready. Appreciate you guys listening, but you guys already know how to follow me. I'm the Bearded Brother. You can hit up my website, thebeardedbrother.com. You can see all my merch. Subscribe to my YouTube. Subscribe to your favorite podcast listening platform. Um, Definitely like breweries. Let's collab. If you really about expanding the beer community and really making beer for everyone, holler at your boy. Let's set up a brew day. Let's set something up. I got a rate sheet and all that good stuff. If you want to even come on the show, we could set that up as well. And, you know, I have some things on the horizon. I'm a contributor for a very prominent Black publication here in Nashville. I'm gonna be a contributor for the craft beer scene and Black people, so I'm super excited about that. I have my first article coming out. Actually, we're recording today, Friday the 30th. It should be dropping in the next day or so. So, but you'll see that coming. And so keep an eye out. Follow me at the Bearded Brother on all social medias. And of course, you know what I always say at the end of every show: grab your friends, good ass beer. Of course, drink up.
Drink up.